This is Nicole Rodrigues, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yes, indeed, as the landscapers kick on here in the backyard. I'm in the backyard tent studio because there's a global pandemic going on and the house gets really small when you got people running businesses and going to school and living in the same space. You know, how is the creative? I mean, you're at home, I'm assuming. How has it been doing these kind of things a lot more on your, in your couch, in your office, in your pajamas, whatever it is? How has that been for you?
Yeah, well, the nice thing is the company, NRPR Group, we always had a work from home element. So prior to the pandemic, Fridays were always a work from home day. So we were always equipped to be able to work virtually. But I think that the pandemic, it's been a work at home year instead of work from home Fridays. But we, I do miss my team, but when it really comes down to it, the health and safety of everyone and even the mindset of their health and safety is number one. So we've been able to remain very productive, even working from home. But I've gotten creative in the different spaces in the house. It's like one day I'll work from even my daughter's room. I was like, I'm so sick of working from the couch or from my desk. I've worked from the table, from the couch, my daughter's room, the kitchen, just to get a little bit of just different scenery because, got to do what you got to do.
It's funny that that's a thing. I mean, first off, I guess, let me go back in time a little bit here. I kind of jumped into a couple things because I started thinking out loud. But this is Nicole Rodrigues, everybody. She's written books. She's a PR founder of a company, an agency that's growing like crazy right now, especially during the pandemic.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk to her. She wrote a book called Beverly Hills Boss, and we'll get into all that stuff. So let's go back to in the olden times when you had an office, that was your creative space. And I'm talking before Stanford themed startups when they would name their conference room the Sequoia room and that kind of stuff. And they had a giant bean bag and a snack center. Before all that stuff,
right.
Your workspace was your workspace. I mean, this is your spot where you create your work. But it turns out, like when you go home, it moves. That space tends to move around unless you happen to find one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's where, you have to create some place in your home that becomes the sacred space that no work enters, right? And for me, that's my room. So from my room, my bathroom, where it's like I get ready, it's that space to separate. And for the most part, the rest of the house is, it's game on if I need an area to do work. So I'm just very thankful I've created a space that I enjoy living in. I know it's just me and my daughter, which is awesome. So, and then sometimes she's, because she's at college, she's in college. So she's at that age where she can also go to her dad's. And so then it's just me and it's like, oh, peace and tranquility. And I love it. I understand that's not the same for everybody, but I'm just very thankful that I really enjoy my home. So the little introvert in me, there is a part of me that is introverted, is actually quite okay with everything going on.
That's fantastic. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about this new workspace. I am literally in the backyard. The landscapers are right outside the tent, and my dog just walked in. But it's just the modern world. I mean, this is how we do it in a global pandemic. And however you get it done in a pandemic, that's good. It's good enough like that.
Yeah, rolling with the punches is so essential. I commend you for the pop-up office. Like, this is very creative.
I have to give my girlfriend a lot of credit for that. She's like, you need to move out, your office. Because I take up, look how loud I am. I mean, how you're yelling into a microphone and talking to people. And, it's a half of a conversation. It's just maddening for them in the house. And so we looked at mini houses, container, all these things. And we're like, let's just buy a tent. And so I
love it.
Yeah, you've had to adapt. You wrote your book. Get this, everybody. Nicole's so smart. She dropped her book on February 18th, 2020, The Beverly Hills Boss. That's interesting timing.
Very, yeah. So, unfortunately, everything started, it shut down a month later. But fortunately, my book is really all about taking your, the ups and downs in life, an idea that you might have for a business, and actually getting that off the ground without the need for venture capital, without the need for having trillions of dollars in your bank account. Truth be told, I had my 401k, I had a savings, I had other places where I was putting my money. But when I started my company, I had all the confidence in the world that I knew what I was doing, and I knew I would slowly just get there. And I knew that with really smart branding and marketing online, it's almost like you're opening your storefront, right? So when I opened the door and people saw the store, it was like, oh, this looks nice. Let's go on in. And I started the company with very little. And I knew it would get here. I even know that we're continuing to grow, but slow and steady is really winning the race. And I'm very glad that basically the book breaks it down on how to do that, right? Getting your house in order so that if you really want to grow a business, here are the fundamental steps. Like, not all the complicated stuff that you're going to see in a business book. It's the reality of here's how you can start a business now, and just making sure that it's legit and you can, legally collect money and have the money go into the right bank account, and that it's not all, because really it's the legal and financial stuff. If you don't do that right, then the business is messed up. But if you can get that right and then market yourself online with all the free tools that are available to you, you've got a business. And so we're in June is going to be 7 years. And I thought this would be a perfect time to share this with everybody. And I'll tell you, the book has come in handy with a lot of friends that I know who've been able to actually get businesses rolling, and take some of that advice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it's interesting. You're like, well, you're a PR firm, but you're also sort of a self-made startup founding accelerator. You help companies do that, and it's hard. I mean, look, people ask me. There are so many podcasts, Nicole. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's zillions. And gosh dang, these lawnmowers are going to be so loud. So you're going to have to talk a lot. What I was going to say is, people shouldn't just have a podcast because it's a business. But you're saying this is how you start a business. How does someone on a limited budget? You don't want to blow your entire retirement. You just want to, maybe work closer towards your love and your passion. How does someone do that? Do you have principles you can share with us?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. First and foremost, again, you don't want to do anything that is going to mess you up with the government or your finances. I'll tell you, as a PR person, now going to business school and getting my MBA. Prior to getting my MBA, I started my company. So I didn't have the slightest clue how to do accounting. I knew how to balance my own checkbook. That's about where it went. And I had no idea what it was like to form a company legally, right? Federally, with the state, and with your city. That's all important. And the reason why that's so important is it just legitimizes what you're doing, and it separates your personal income. Because when the company makes money, that doesn't mean you make all that money, right? Obviously, my company collects money and I have bills and employees that I need to pay. But even when I first started the company, that was the first thing that I did. I was like, look, I don't want to go to jail for doing something by accident. And I don't want to end up in tax court because I didn't do something right? So I had a very great CPA who, she really encouraged me to do it. She said, Nicole, if those are the things that you're afraid of, let me register the business. And once you're registered, go and make sure that you have a bank that's going to work with you, that works hand in hand with small businesses. The larger institutions like the Wells Fargos of the world and the Bank of America's, they have things set up for small business, but that's not their shtick, right? That's not what they are known for. Find a bank that's going to work with you because you're going to need it. And I didn't understand what she meant until I met John, who's like my banker. And I was like, gosh, this guy's so nice. He's like, Nicole, if you need to deposit this, if you need to move, just give me a call, shoot me a text. And I'm thinking, I've got a banker in my pocket, someone who can understand where to move the money and all of that stuff. And I thought, wow, this is really great. And then I had an EIN number, right? Like my business number. And so it separated from my personal business funds. And then the nice thing is, the next thing you want to start a business, or even a podcast, you've got to have branding. What's the name? What's going to make it different? Where are you going to market it? you can start an Instagram page for free, but it does take a lot of time to get it going. So when you commit to a social platform, know that it's not just starting the platform, it's thinking about the content. On LinkedIn, nowadays, especially in this pandemic, as a business owner or even a podcast host, it's important that your LinkedIn is in a good place, because other than Google, LinkedIn is becoming the second, sort of most trafficked place where people are going to look to legitimize you, right? They're also going to look at your website. So even if it's a static one-page thing, this is the Break It Down show, and this is what I do, and here are the guests that I've had, and this is why we're so great. When people are on the fence about either working with you, doing business with you, even being on the podcast, what are you presenting to the world in terms of who you are? And because I did that for a living, I was like, sweet, that is the third thing that needs to be done when you start a business. And I actually know how to do that. So I looked at what I knew and what I didn't. And I was very smart about just fessing up and saying, Nicole, you don't know how to do this. Now's not the time to guess, especially when it comes to, finances, legal, and then of course, marketing. I didn't even do my own website. I knew for a fact I needed someone who knew how to code and make a great website first for me before I dove in and did my own, right? Now we can go in and do it for other companies, but I didn't want to do my own because I knew I'd get lost in the shuffle. I'd probably overthink it for 75 years and never launch my company. So those are things that, if you really want to start a business, at the end of the day, those are the three places that you start. And then you want to make sure that you're thinking about, okay, if I'm selling a product, get on Instagram, get on Etsy, get on the platforms that you can show what it is you're selling visually. If you just offer a service, make sure that your website is clearly stating what the services are, who you give those services to. Then do you have a capabilities deck where if someone wants to talk to you and they're like, okay, cool, I've looked at your website, but can you send me something? Sure. Here's a list of all of our capabilities and what we can do for you, and make it clear, spell it out. So these are all things that we are now in this pandemic helping businesses do. They're like, I need to start a company. I just got laid off. And you know what? I didn't like that job anyway. And I really want to come to the table and I want to bring this gift to the world. And now if I'm absolutely not behind it, I'm just like, you might want to wait a little bit longer. You've only been in your profession for 2 years. You might want to give it some time or whatever it is. I'll be honest, right? I've seen hundreds of startups, and I know what it takes for a startup to actually kind of go up and move. And a lot of it has to do with interpersonal work. Are you willing to do the work and make all those sacrifices? Because if you are, then great. If you're not, you're going to want to find another corporate job where people are going to take care of those other things for you, right? So it's really you got to look at yourself in the mirror and know that if being an entrepreneur and starting a business or starting a podcast or starting anything was easy, then everybody would do it. So yeah.
That's such great advice. I mean, I like to say that when you start out, you have to wear all the hats. Yeah. You have to get good enough to be able to find heads to put hats under. Right. And it's like, and that means you have to be able to make money show up, and it's hard. As someone who does a podcast, we're really successful around here. I mean, we're in the first percentile in terms of everything, but the mountain is still steep in front of us because it is such. Joe Rogan has the ability to go on TV, has a 20+ year career before he got into this. And so he was a national level known person. And then, the podcast, even for him, slowly grew into the monster that it is. And so this takes a long time and a lot of work in terms of the entertainment industry. But what if you're just like, I do want to get on Etsy and I'm desperate to make this jewelry just as my side job. And if I sell a little bit, great, but how would I actually structure it right? And I love the comment you made, about all of the little things, okay, you can do a capabilities deck. Don't forget you have to have a one-pager. Oh, and don't forget you have to create. And don't forget you have to create. Yeah. And yes, you can do all of these things individually, but my gosh, as someone who has to do all these things, what order they need to go in. Where should I spend my money? Where should I spend my time? I've got a website. I've got too many websites. It drives me crazy.
Sure.
So the ability to hire things out is. Especially nowadays too, it's everywhere. You got to find a good person, but that really is a powerful thing. Even hiring out PR, right? Like you guys can probably whip up a bunch of attention way faster than I can, but that costs money. So talk a little bit about how do you sort those things out? Because when you say step one, step two, but there's sub steps within, the marketing / PR world, branding and everything else. When I'll shut up here in a second, but when I advise people on starting a podcast, I'm like, I don't care what you name it, because everything after that point is significantly harder than naming it. So you have this this conundrum, like, oh, this is the best name and the best idea. I don't care about your idea. I care about your execution on the things that come after. Can you put content out every week? And it's okay to say you can't, because there's different paths where you are on podcasts or you share a pod, whatever it is, right? So talk a little bit about those sub things and just getting that mental space. It is okay to not make my own website. It is okay to spend $400 and hire someone overseas and at least get like a ground floor bill.
Yes, all of that is okay. And I try to tell people as much as possible, we were put in the universe to work with others. Not one of us can do everything ourselves and do it right and efficiently. We are human beings, and each human being has their own gifts and limitations. And I think if you can really, really honestly look at yourself and say, what are my gifts? What is it that I'm really good at? And not just what am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? What part of it do I enjoy? And look, accounting's not my favorite. I don't want to do that. And and that's why I have Jerry in my life, and she's the best accountant ever. And I just adore her. And I'm always like, hey, Jerry, can we afford it? And she's like, no. Okay. Hey, Jerry, want to hire somebody else? Can I? She's like, you need to bring in this much. Okay, got it. I don't have to make those decisions, because if I did, it would be like, oh, everybody gets a raise and then we'd be broke. And I'd be like, oh,
sorry, everybody's fired.
But everybody's hired. I'm like, I don't want to wear all these hats. Can I just hire 20 people? And it's like, no, because to make a living wage here in California, it's expensive. So she's always like, if you want someone to wear that hat, this is what you need to do on the new business side so that somebody can come in and you can afford it without, being fiscally irresponsible, right? So thinking about those little things and knowing that if you cannot put together your own website, that's okay. There are plenty of people who can get that done for you. If you don't know how to describe your blog or your podcast and you're like, oh, I don't know. There are people who can do a quick project with you.
Yeah.
How do I work on my messaging? Because that messaging, you talk about steps. You want to start something. Usually people are like, I want a podcast. Okay, what's it going to be like? Well, I'm going to have guests on. Okay, what are they going to talk about? Business. Okay, well, what's going to make you different? So you really have to think about those things and put it into words, because then all of those words, those become part of your brand. You want to put that on LinkedIn. You want to put that on an Instagram page. You want to make sure that that's on your website so that when people see your site, they get a feeling, but when they read about you, they understand you. So they know whether or not that's going to connect with them. And communication at the core of everything, being a business owner, being a founder, whatever, communication is number one. Can you communicate to your employees or somebody who you're interviewing what it is you do? If they don't have a clue, you're not going to be able to give them direction on what to do, because they're not going to know what purpose they're serving, So that at the core of everything is so important. So breaking that down, thinking about not only how I look visually, right? You have some sort of brand presence, like a logo. What does my logo look and feel like? Okay, that's done. Great. Then how do we put that into words? Okay, and I can hire someone who can quickly put a base website on, knowing your website can evolve and update. Have something there. So when people search for you, not only can they read about you, but they see that on the website. Then you start thinking about press. If you don't have those fundamentals put together, I won't even take you as a client. Okay, great. I can call the New York Times, get you an interview. Where are you going to put it? I'll put it on my LinkedIn. Okay, great. And then when that gets buried, where does it live after that to legitimize what it is you're doing? Oh, right. It should live on your website. So make sure that there's a place ready for it. It always looks good as seen on, Forbes, as seen on this. Get those things ready so that when you do start going after press, you have a place for it to live. And depending on the size of your business, the scope, and I would say the competitive landscape, even if you're getting 1 or 2 press hits in a month, that's something. And then you can share that on social media. Oh, hey guys, look, I was just interviewed on the Break It Down show. For a fact, I'm going to be sharing this, right? I'm going to be putting it on my LinkedIn. I'm going to thank you as the host. I'm going to tell everybody to tune in, because that's going to help create a stronger relationship between us too. That I am thankful that you're taking the time to talk to me, and you're thankful that I'm on the show. Well, this is networking, and the only way we can do it now with this pandemic is online. So we've got to show each other love. And the way to do that is have the platforms ready to be able to reciprocate when someone is actually giving you, that like, oh, hey, Nicole's going to be on the show. I want to help people tune into yours so that it further builds your audience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And also, by the way, the PR person that contacts me and says, hey, Nicole and friends are all coming on the Break It Down show, and my job is to say yes, put great content together.
Yeah.
Nicole, it baffles me that people who should know better according to their level of notoriety, that they don't share. And I'm like, and then here's dumb me, been doing this for years. My friend who's kind of PR savvy, she's definitely PR savvy. She says, yeah, you should ask them who their person is so you can get them what they need to share the show. And I'm like, yeah, I'd never thought about that. I asked the artist, and of course they don't do it because they're out there writing music or acting or whatever. Mm-hmm. They've got someone for that.
Usually they do. That's exactly right? Because again, what we were just talking about is we can't all do it ourselves. Okay, I'm on this podcast and then I got to go here. I got to blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, on my team, I have team members who tee it up for me. Right? So they'll say, hey, Nicole, it went live, or here's the link. And I'll be like, thank you so much. And then I'll quickly take it and I'll put it up. But they'll also just make sure that, and here, so it's easily accessible. Here are the handles to use and maybe some hashtags. So they get me organized so that as I'm working, I can put it up on my personal. They already know to put it up on the company page, but we're all working in unison. And that is something that I find so many. Even if you're an artist, you're a business. If you are a musician, you're a business. If that is your mindset, then you've got to think about how you are constantly sharing the content that's, being spread around with you, for you, whatever. So that's how you build a brand presence for your business. So we're very, very big on that since day one, since I started the company. Every time someone has me talk on a podcast or I do an interview, we always share that. And in fact, we always put it on our press page because we want to show people by best practices, and it works. It totally works. People are so thankful, like, oh, thank you so much. This is how you build relationships.
And I suppose the inverse is true too. When you see someone's one pager, and you've had them on the show, the Break It Down show, and you're like, hey, there's Forbes, there's MSNBC, there's CNN. Hey, wait a second. Like, why didn't they put our show on? It's a little bit like, oh, I guess we're not as good of friends as I thought. And you don't take it personally, but it does. Like, I notice it. Like, I'm out here working my heart out, trying to put these things up, trying to give you a voice, expose you to my audience, and give you something to share with yours. And it has a negative weight when that isn't done,
Totally. And honestly, the nicest thing that you could do is just say, wow, this is a really great one pager. I know that space is limited, but here's our new logo, or here's our logo. And in fact, the file has been whatever. I mean, your logo is it's a perfect size. It's like this awesome little circle, right? Like the Break It Down show. Hey, in case you need it, or in case we hadn't shared it, here you go. We'd love to see it on your updated, one page or whatever it is.
Right.
Doesn't hurt to ask, and that way they're like, oh, sure, I'll do it or whatever, because you never know who's making the decisions on what's going on there, like what the designer decides to do. So shoot, I would do that to make sure that when people are sharing their one sheeters, that your brand is there. So it up levels your brand.
Yeah, and these are those little things where, like, now I need a response form that I have to send out to everybody that you've been on the Break It Down show. Don't forget, and it's like, and now you have to follow up on these things, and these are these hats, right? That I've got in the closet. I don't even have time to wear them, but you're talking, and I'm listening, because there's so many of these little steps that I'd rather spend time doing that than on Twitter, because I can't find traction on Twitter. So, like, why am I spending time there? Let's work on these personal focused things. I love that part of doing this. Can you give us some examples from your clients where they come in and everything's there? It's just a basket case. And then you sort of just string it together and say, now, like, everything's here. Let's just do some work cleaning this up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And to be honest, that's majority of the time, right? And it's to no one's fault. Not everyone went to school for marketing. Not everybody understands that. Oftentimes, if you are a tech company, a lot of the times the leader is a CEO and was an engineer, or maybe they were a doctor. Marketing is the last thing they know how to do. Sometimes they think they know how to do it, and you're just like, calm down. Go be an engineer and go work with those numbers. Let me please do your marketing. Yes. So where they have it, right? It's like, well, we started at Instagram, we started this, we started that, and you look and you're like, wow, the content's a mess. There's no synergy. That's the first thing that we do, because I know that our team can call attention to a company, but I also know that media are going to Google, they're going to search, they're going to judge. I want to make sure, and I always say this to my clients, I got to get you ready for the ball. I'm getting Cinderella ready for the ball. We know you're pretty. We know that you can go there and, whatever, but you got to get cleaned up a little bit. So here's how we're going to do that. And so before I even take on a client, we do a little mini assessment on all of that. And then we say, okay, the messaging is a little bit off. Let's do that quickly. Let's get your brand across all your social media. Let's get all of that rolling in a system to where you have daily posts, and this is how you're doing it. And then let's switch on the press. And everyone's so like, well, no, call the press. And then we do. And I'm like, okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to call the press. They're going to say, who are these people? What do they do? And why are you reaching out to me? Because they look like they're, they just got started in a basement. So it is what it is. We're humans. We naturally look at something and we judge it within 3 seconds. So, we have one company right now where, we did a little bit of their messaging and got a first press release out because they needed it. And then I was like, now we are going to stop on the press. You want to know why? Because you look like a mess online. We're going to get your Instagram going. We're going to get a newsletter going out for you. We're going to get this going for you. We're going to actually strengthen your marketing machine. And that's exactly what we're doing. And it's like, cool. Now they have a weekly newsletter that's going out, Instagram posts that look amazing that are going to go out. Twitter has been on a daily basis. And so now they actually have the marketing machine going so that when you plug in PR, what PR is meant to do is add fuel to the fire. Right? If you put PR in too early, then you're not getting as much out of the engine as you want. So yeah, no, we're really big on that because we talk to our media friends. We know what it is they're looking for. And if we're pitching something that they don't have, or they're going to see like, Nicole, this is missing, let's get the assets in order. Let's get everything together. So we're really good about organizing companies so that then is streamlined and in motion.
I know we kind of covered this several times, but I just think this is such a fantastic way to screw your company up by just being overwhelmed by this. I mean, I feel it all the time, So like, okay, I hear everything you're saying. I need to get all these assets together. I do not have a budget, like I have to do this stuff myself. I've got, and so your book, by the way, everybody should look in the show right there, Beverly Hills Boss on Amazon right there. If you click that link, you help us out. And of course, when you buy the book, you help Nicole out. And then by reading it, you help yourself. This is a win-win. but it is simply overwhelming. How do I make it more bite-sized? I mean, look, yes, I need like a welcome packet. I mean, I do most of this typing myself, and I've got some formats and everything, but there are so many of these things where I don't ask them to post the show. I don't follow up on that. There are just so many things to do. How do you make it so that you can really, if you have to do it yourself because you haven't reached the point where you can hire a PR agency, or like I still got to hire an accountant first, Nicole said. And so now I hired an accountant,
Right.
And she's like, hey, you can barely afford me. You're like, oh, all right. I got, So, I mean, how do you organize these things? How do you get over the impossible feel of getting these, 500 tasks done, and many of these tasks repeat daily, weekly?
Yeah. The main thing is remembering that you're the core, right? So let's do this in real time. I'm actually going to do this with you so that people can see how it can be done. Okay. So the first things first is remember that you are the core. Okay. The core has to be strong for any foundation, right? So imagine, you have this ecosystem that's going to be built around you. And even on those days where you want to break down because of the Break It Down show, you have to find your place and find your center as often as possible and when you need, right? And remember that the stronger you are, and this is why I tell my family, look, I need to not talk to anybody for a week. This is my time. Unless one of you guys wants to step in and pay my bills, I need to get this organized, right? So think about where everything stands with you and how you have yourself organized.
Okay.
Do you have a to-do list that you check off, that you at least keep running? And what I would recommend is doing something like Todoist. It's free. You pay no money. And I basically have a running Todoist list so that everything I need to do in life, if it's like, oh, I'll call the vet. Oh, and then this for work. I don't do it in any fancy way. It's out of my brain and into this thing so I don't forget. It's like, oh, call Samantha and give her my headshot. Okay, just put that down so that it's there. And then I can look and I can just at that point start moving. Okay, so today these 5 things are going to get done. These other ones are not, but they don't go away. It increases your efficiency and capacity to do. So if you think about everything you have to do for yourself in life, personally, for the Break It Down show, for everything, just get it out of here and put it all down. Because once it's visible, it becomes a goal and it becomes something that you're going to do. Okay. Now think about one of the things on your to-do list is, oh, I've got to get an accountant who's going to get this organized. Even if it's just, at the beginning, when I first started NRPR Group, truth be told, that whole year for the company, okay, this isn't even me. The whole year we only made $43,000. Can't even live in California for having a company and whatever. So imagine how much I was paid out of that 43. Basically nothing. I didn't even pay myself. It was all that money went into the company. And I was like, okay, because each time you invest in the company, all I was thinking about was watering the plant. I'm like, okay, $5,000 I just made. We got to put that into this website so that I can go out and pitch more business, or I've got to, invest in whatever. Like I had an opening party. Thankfully, an opening party, I went and bought shot glasses for everyone who came. And in there was a piece of paper. The shot glasses maybe costed me $500. And in there said, if you need PR, give us a shot. And everybody walked out from the party, and I got 3 clients because of that. I spent the $500 and people are like, wow, that was a really creative thing. So think about the money part of it and how you want to get your money game straight. There's something called, and I'm gonna send you their name because they helped me out very early on. They can do bookkeeping for you for very, very, very little, right? So my accountant, she was more looking at the tax stuff, but they charged me, I want to say it was like maybe $200 or $300 a month to just run my QuickBooks and know that anytime I was writing a check or using the company ATM card, that they were putting it in the right place so that at the end of the year, it was really easy for the taxes. And it was very little, but they were like the first people that I hired and put on a regular basis. It's like, okay, I'm going to give you $200 a month and you are going to keep my money straight for the company. So,
I mean, this right there, that is huge to not have to go back and sort it all out. And then someone like me, I just work so dang hard. I don't have time to go back.
Nor do you want to, right? You don't want to.
Yeah. I want to go back to and say something about images. Like, I ask everybody, like, send me a landscape image of you, like more candid, not a headshot, right? Because I've done my work and I know what YouTube likes, and people send me, the wrong picture. And I'm like, okay, fine. I will do my best to fix it. But these things, they matter so much in terms of, like, when I have some Macedonians that help me with the show, don't write something clever, write it for SEO. It doesn't really matter. If they're going to read a show title or a show note, like, it's primarily written so it's discoverable, because I've got to get it to you so you can read it. And so these pictures are, who knew? These pictures are so important for a video or for anything. So just in general, all of these things have sub things, masterful skills that you have to develop. And again, like, it could be amazed to do that. And I also wanted to add this too about your to-do list, because Mark Victor Hansen was on the show. He's the guy that wrote all the chicken soup books. Yeah. And he said, have a to-do list, but don't forget that you've done it, and go, look,
cross it off.
Yeah, you've done it, and it's celebrated. Like, you look at all of the things you've done.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't get anything done because your to-do list is too long. It's not realistic. Something happened. You had to go to the vet, or all these things. It's easy to beat yourself up. But, like, if I get 4 things done on my to-do list, it is a great day. And you have to celebrate some of this good that you're doing, instead of just beating yourself up that you didn't get it all done. I'm going to shut up now and let you talk.
No. He is exactly right. Before they went out of business, I used to use, it was my favorite, because I'd hear a ding every time. Even it was like, call Gramps. Like, I'd call my grandpa would call, and I wouldn't be able to return his call. And I'm like, I put it in my to-do list. I'm like, I literally don't even have time to call my grandpa. Right. And it's like, okay, call Gramps. I'd click it and it would go ding. And I was like, oh. Each time I heard the ding, it was so rewarding. It was like I did something. I talked to Gramps and I got to hear my ding. Todoist doesn't have that. So anybody from Todoist listening, please add a ding so that, it feels like we're, earning that star or whatever. But he's exactly right. Yeah. My to-do list this weekend consisted of 27 things to do. 27. And I was just overwhelmed. So what I started doing was, okay, I can move things up in terms of priority. And I'm like, what are the first 4 things I can just knock out real fast? Yeah. Put them up at the top. And then I 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was like, oh, then I was catching on the momentum. And I'll tell you, by the end of last night, I finished everything. But this is also, it's self-discipline. When friends are like, oh, hey, do you want to talk? Do you want to blah, blah, blah? No. I have 27 things on my to-do list, and unless you're doing one of them, we are not talking until next week. Okay. And so it's so much of it is self-discipline. And so it sounds to me like these emails and the follow-up things, that if you were to actually just hunker down one day, tune everybody out, and draft them all, even just brain dump it all, and just say, okay, if I'm writing an email, this is like, hey, welcome to blah, blah, blah. Thank you for booking with me. And I'm sure you already have some of this in your email that you've used. Oh,
sure. Yeah.
Right. You've got to piece it together in a template. And I guarantee you, do you have anybody assisting you? Like any
that person looks a lot like me.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So you want to make your life as easy as humanly possible. And the way to do that is replication. Anything that you can do that can be replicated, that becomes golden. And then it basically becomes a best practice for yourself. So you basically say, okay, someone pitched me, like say, Samantha from my team, or Aaron from my team, or someone from my team pitched you. Oh, Nicole, she looks like she'd be a great guest. Great. Here's the almost like canned response. And you can leave placeholders for your own, like, oh, looks like Nicole is a really nice person, blah, blah, blah. You send that. And it gives bulleted, clear instructions. Now, if you want Nicole to be on, I need to know what time. I need the picture by this time. If you can actually send that to me now, that would be great. And, her bio. And then that way, Samantha or Aaron or whoever it is like, great. here's her photo, here's this, I just talked to her and she's available on this day, then you can say, great, here's the calendar invite. So if you can think about how you want the system to flow every time, you force everyone nicely into your system and it becomes replicated. So it's like booked, confirmed once more, calendared, thank you. And in that thank you is remember to send a logo. Hey, if you're doing a one-sheeter or Nicole's doing what, if you plan to put this on your website, I've already attached the logo for you. I'm going to be sharing this on this date. If you guys plan to share it, these are the hashtags and the handles I prefer. Thank you so much. And let me know if you have any other guests. It sounds to me like a quick 4-step. If you just write that all down, you can constantly grab, cut, paste, and you will find just how productive you can be on that side. And then when you get to a point where you can bring on an intern or someone who can work part-time to assist you, guess what you can give them? All of that messaging.
Boy, that stuff would be awesome because there's so much of that,
Here
right?
you go, and don't mess this up.
Yeah.
You go by this rule or all these rules, and then they're like, okay, great. Then they don't have to recreate the wheel. And what they're doing is maybe managing a spreadsheet of guests for you. And you can have meetings with them once a month or once a week. But I'll tell you, that's how, when I first started the company, it was just me. And the first person I brought on were, I had some really cool interns. Those were the days, so shout out to Benny, Tiffany, and Mike Kelly. Those were, and Tom. I was like, look, I have knowledge to share and very little money that I can give you as an intern, but what you'll learn from me, you will be able to take. And I'll tell you, they're all just really, really incredible. And I am so thankful they believed in me in those early days. But we started putting together those systems that to this day, we're still, using and even strengthening as we go. So, there's a way, if you can make it easily replicated for someone, you're good to go.
Yeah, that's great. It takes quite a bit of trust, and obviously you've written a book about being a boss and everything. So, how do you trust someone with these things? I mean, like I've got guys from Macedonia writing, copy for me, and I have to review it, everything.
Yeah.
And there's a coaching process on what I want and how I want to do it. And by the way, forget all that because there's a new, algorithm on it on SEO or Google and everything. But there's a constant, process. And then listen, I make mistakes daily because there's a lot going on, right? And so I try not to get too riled up when someone makes a mistake, but mistakes happen. How do you deal with that trust and the inevitable, like, oh God, I'm so sorry I screwed this up. I mean, I have a process where, like, when somebody gets booked, I have to do it in this order. Otherwise I will forget it. And then it's not professional. Right. And so, but I will on occasion make that mistake just because, I'm right in the middle of booking someone. The cat runs out and I'm like, and then the cat becomes 100% focused. Right.
Yeah.
Well, talk about with the team.
That's where your personal to-do list is going to be so important. Even if it's something like in the back of my mind, even if I'm not physically doing it, I'm the boss. I'm responsible for it getting done. Because believe me, I'm going to get the angry phone call from the client if it's not done. So I'll put that in my to-do list, even though it's someone on my team. Maybe Anish has to do it. Well, I'm going to put it on my to-do list to where if I don't see that Anish has put it in his list of things, because we use something called Monday.com. It's like a production tracker, right? So if I see that it's not on Monday, I'm like, hey, Anish, reminder note, this has to get done for X client. And then when he responds and says, yes, I'm doing it, I'm sending it to your email right now, guess what? I didn't have to do it, but I could take it off my to-do list because that reminder has happened and that means it's physically getting done. So that's why really getting into that habit of keeping that daily tracker of like things to do in your life or that have to get done. Maybe you have to remind your girlfriend to do something, put that on that to-do list, call the plumber. That is something in your life that it's going to be a distraction for your business if it doesn't get done. Nobody wants bad plumbing. You know what I mean? Like, get the plumbing.
tiling in the house right now that I have to also mind that as well on my to-do list.
There you go. So if you have all that going,
Yeah.
then, and then the inevitable, oh, shoot, I forgot, or shoot, that didn't get done. Being okay with knowing that you're going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I've forgotten things. I've said that to my team. I've gotten so much better, so I'm just like, I'm on it, but I'm honest. Hey, you know what? That's my bad. I totally forgot that. Or they're going to forget things. And I might get riled up in the moment. I'll have to be honest with you. I think it's like that Puerto Rican trigger where I'm just like, do not be angry, but it's like, then I'm like, no, hold on. And so I might, so shout out to like Anish. I'm just going to call that out. I adore him. And, there was one thing that he was doing for a press op. And then I was like, crap, this didn't get done. And I was like, And then afterwards it was like, all right, dude, I just want you to know that, like, one, as your boss, I've freaking been there, man. Like, I have made those mistakes. So here's what we're going to do to make it better. And this is how we're going to get out of it. And, and then it becomes like PTSD, like he's like, I'll never do that again, but I really feel like, especially in the leadership position, even if you do lose your cool sometimes, because it's going to happen, you make sure that you make those phone calls and you fix it quickly. Right? Because people are also learning your nuances, what triggers you. And being under the amount of pressure that I am on daily, it's, I have to make those phone calls like, hey, you know what? I didn't mean to freak you out. That was more of like, let's get it done rather than, oh, I'm mad at you, and it keeps that rapport going, because if you don't have that and you have weird animosity, you don't have a productive company. You have people who don't enjoy working, with you and with others. And that's not what you want, right? It's that positivity that really keeps things going. So clear the smoke whenever you can, as quickly as you can.
This is these are good points. In terms of, we had the show we released, I think it was on Saturday. It's the podcast version of a live episode with a guy named Jen Rutherford. He's a former Green Beret. We were talking about leadership. And one of the things that a lot of us in the military side of things we learn is, so when the client calls and there's a problem, you deal with it. What I don't say is, you know what, Anish didn't do it. I'll just go yell at him. Like, you never say that. Like, you have to say, this is my machine. It didn't work. Yeah, it's on me. And then when I call Anish, I'm not saying I'm perfect at this. When I call my guy, and I'll say, hey, this is not going how I want it to go. And I usually don't get too mad, but if I realize I'm getting a little riled up, I'll say, and understand, I'm just excited. I'm not mad at you.
Very passionate.
Yeah, we have to learn on this, right? Like, so what did I do to make sure, like, how did we not back each other up here to let this mistake get out? Because one of us should have caught this, And these are the things where I'm like, there is something for me in this. Maybe I didn't do something, but that's a choice that I made that allowed this mistake to go further down the road,
Absolutely. And I think that makes a perfect opportunity. Where we have right now with our company is, each time I'm finding that I'm explaining something over and over again, or I'm explaining or coaching somebody or new people on the same things. When we were all working in person, we had something called the playbook, and the playbook was all hard copies. You'd open up the playbook and basically all the answers to the test were in there. How do we file? How do we respond to a client? How do we respond to media? How do we follow up? How are we, we want to remain as professional as possible in every sense. When the pandemic happened, it was like, okay, this was all in hard copy so that it could stay at the office, but now we actually have to make it virtual. So anytime something happens where it's like, oh, there was a misstep or there's a mistake or something that we all need to learn how to do, then I'll say, okay, great. So Chantel, as we're in the middle of making this happen, write out a best practices doc for it so that it's actually being recorded, so that she could run it by me and I could look at the steps and say, yep, that's exactly right. So that way, the next time we do it, someone has a step-by-step on how to do it, and that those little things don't get forgotten. And then again, as things happen, it's like, oh shoot, we didn't remember that. Add it to the best practices for X. And now our best practices, we can hand that to somebody and say, just do this, and it's plug and play. So it's really that recording of things that helps with the communication and the training so much. But every opportunity where something is messed up is just another opportunity to learn.
I love that. We're running short on time because I'm actually back to back. My next show is with a friend doing corporate culture, and we're going to talk about that. But this is awesome, Nicole, and I love that you've come on and laid this stuff out. I mean, if nothing else, it's been a therapy session for me because, there are literally so many things in the business that I have to do, and it gets. I mean, I was traveling, and I spent the entire flight from Atlanta to California writing something that I needed to write, and I'm like, okay, it took a long time. It's still not quite done yet, but I just put 5 hours into this thing. Let me get on to the next thing now. And there's always another next thing. I'm working on this Google project thing. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just so much time. And I appreciate you helping break that down because I know a lot of us feel this way, especially with all the COVID inhibitors that are out there. Like I like to say, like, if we're going to do this, COVID caveats apply. Like, who knows if this will happen? Wireless may be bad. It may have rained in your hometown this morning, and so the landscapers are all here now instead of an hour ago. It's like things,
Yeah. Well, look, you're doing great, and I'll tell you that it's like just remember that we're all human, and that again, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And if you know what has to get done, if there are a couple days that you could just block off to do it, you're going to buy yourself time in the future. You're going to have those systems in place. And I'll tell you, the success of my company, I owe to systems and constantly just going easy on myself, especially when it's like, I can't get it all done, but over almost 7 years, we've been getting it done. And I think same thing for you. And there's so many free tools that, like, even if you want to talk outside of this, call me, like, we're friends now. So I will happily let you know a lot of the free tools that I had to use when it was just me, and I needed people to help me. So things like Canva, like I said, the accountants or the accounting bookkeeping team that was so affordable, and all these other little systems that you can put in place to get help. They're out there,
And there's also people desperate to help small businesses, whether it's the SBA or whatever. And those are resources that are available to anybody, and it's something that we can all do. We can all get there, just bite-size that stuff, and, watch a Google video a day on how to do something, and you'll get better at the pictures of the SEO or any of these things. It's true. And I love it. I love that we get to have these conversations too and put this out there for folks to use it and understand what a resource you are. Anybody who wants to connect with Nicole can do so on LinkedIn. The link is there. If you're listening on the podcast side, just type in Nicole RPR, and then she'll come up. Nicole Rodrigues is also easy to do. Then here is the book as well, Beverly Hills Boss on Amazon. By the way, this lady is so busy. She's exploding this company, and she's getting an MBA right now because she's
I am. I actually put the reason why at the end of the book. It's actually the last chapter.
Love it. I love it. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. Let's do this again real soon. And since we're both local, let's, when it's safe to do so, let's get together and chat it out and see how we can help one another.
I would love to do that. Yeah. And even earlier than that, if you want to go through a phone call, I was just thinking we also have like a checkoff list for just that you're in your mind as a startup, like small business. We go through the 20 things that you need to do in the right order to make it streamlined for you. I'll just chat and I'll say, okay, these are the 5 things that you're missing. Do these. And then you'll feel good about the next steps that you have to take without wondering if you're doing it in the right order.
NRPR Group.com. That's where you get all that information on Nicole. Thank you, Nicole, so much. Stand by. I'm going to sign off.